We'll call the November regular meeting of the Inlet and Beach Protection Board to order. Okay.
Casey, can you speak louder?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can now. That's better.
Okay, sorry. And I was hitting it with my papers. Okay. Everyone's here. So, first item that we will deal with is the approval of the agenda. So I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passed unanimously. Okay, approval of minutes of the October 25th meeting. Motion to,
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the October 25th meeting.
I can second that motion.
okay, any other changes, corrections? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that was approved unanimously. Okay, annual beach monitoring report, Grand Way.
I can go through your slides for you.
Okay, sure. I went through this at the Board of Commissioners meeting, but I'll just go through really quickly. The annual monitoring is for FEMA NERC to maintain FEMA eligibility for engineered beaches, and as well as just keeping an eye on where's the erosion, where's the accretion, where does the nourishment need to happen. The town's been doing it for about 17 or 18 years now. And we look at volume change and shoreline change, and these are just some photos from the 80s and 90s where houses out or on the beach and everything. And the beach, it looks a whole lot better now than it did back then 20 years ago. And comparing some of these photos. Okay. So this is just the 2017 hurricane season, not the one with Florence and Michael that just came up. Our annual monitoring usually goes about mid-year to mid-year. The 2017 hurricane season wasn't too bad. There was, for the town of Holden Beach, because it was Irma and Maria, and obviously there's some big names in there, but just not in this area. And then, I was even talking, just last Saturday, we had that king tide, and then an extra foot of water on top of that. And it, usually when we have something like that, that's associated with hurricane storm surge. We usually don't see a surge like that in the winter. And it was really pretty amazing. And I guess, I guess we have to expect some more of that. And with those really high tides, and then obviously the waves are strong too at that point, we're going to see accelerated erosion. But yeah, that was really something last Saturday. Next slide. This is just kind of a picture of the Holden Beach, the Central Reach project was about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago. This coming up in a few months. And so that material is still kind of equilibrating, and most of the material is still on the beach, thankfully. It did take a hit here with Florence and Michael, and then just there's natural background erosion, but it's still performing pretty well, and it's doing its job. It's protecting infrastructure, homes, and that sort of thing. We can go to the next one, Christine. The one interesting thing about the last survey season, which was basically is after the nourishment. We saw a lot of material building up, moving back onshore from this 12-foot contour, the depth contour, and all that material that we moved offshore during Matthew, and now it's coming back onshore, which is a good thing too. A lot of times we don't see this out here, but we kind of still consider that kind of active part of the sand system, the littoral system. So last year, we actually, the town gained 440,000 cubic yards of sand. You can go to the next one, Christine. Which is really, really kind of amazing because there were no nourishments there. And 440,000 cubic yards of material, that's a lot of material. We did see the gain. Here's that 440,000. Except for the east end, we saw that gain, and but that gain was out in the deeper water, so you didn't really see that in the upper beach. The upper beach actually eroded a little bit if we look at just the surf zone area.
Was it in mostly the Central Reach area?
No, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, there was on the west end, there was also growth of accretion of material from that outer surf zone.
But not on the east, right?
Yeah, the east end got hit pretty good the whole way across. The east end from the standard east end lost material, but everything else did really well out here in the 5 foot to 12 foot depths in the surf zone. The Central Reach did have a good portion of that, but obviously when we put that Central Reach project, we put that we artificially construct that beach berm and then let the material move offshore. And this is really a lot of the material moving onshore from 12 feet out.
I have a really silly question.
Yeah.
What marks the beginning of the standard east end for you in your mind?
Station 40, and that's right around Blockade
Runner? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of right where the island takes a little bend, but
Okay.
it was right around Blockade Runner.
Okay.
Fran, I had a question about,
Yep.
it would be the town east.
Yes.
Dry beach surf zone volume change, 140,000.
Yep.
Is there some reason you think that section was so out of line with the rest?
Yeah, that's equilibration from the beach nourishment, where we put a whole bunch of sand on the upper beach, knowing that the beach is going to adjust naturally.
Right.
And so that's where we saw that. So that material moved off and that into the near shore, so we can see that.
I was just wondering why that one was so skewed.
Yeah. No, I think that's nourishment related still. Because actually the Central Reach nourishment held up really well for that first year. It was a relatively mild year, and the beach usually takes 3 to 6 months for the beach to quote unquote equilibrate. Where obviously when you're building the beach with bulldozers and things and then the pipes, you just build a big fat kind of berm along the beach, knowing that that it's going to.
I just wonder why that
Yeah.
section compared to like the pier and the town west, which were also so
You're right.
skewed.
I think there was a little bit more material there, and then the pier and the town west in terms of there's the two different two basic directions. There's the cross shore direction and then there's the longshore direction. And so we're seeing some longshore transport that way, and that's kind of the net longshore transport. So I think some of this material that's eroding out of the east end is going that way, but some of it's going that way and that way. And then maybe some of it goes that way. If we get some waves from the southwest or from the south even, it can get the stuff that way. So. Okay, Christy. And then this is, so that was volume, and then we look at mean high water. And so this is that equilibration we're talking about, where the mean high water line did recede because we had artificially pumped it up with the nourishment. But then we do see some accretion of the mean high water line to the downdrift, and then there's a little bit of accretional spreading outside the footprint over on the east end even. So, but then, and this is the one I was talking with Pat about. This area has been a little troublesome here in the last few years, where the far west end, it's got a huge dune system, so we haven't, the town doesn't really have to nourish it, but it's been eroding pretty significantly over the last few years, 5 years or so, when traditionally it's been pretty accretional or stable, at least stable, mostly accretional. So we're keeping an eye on that, and then we're talking about planting some more, secondary and tertiary dune system, like some shrub kind of material. Maybe not, right. You got your beach, and then you've got your grasses. You primarily sea oats, and then about bitter panicum and a few other things. And Steve Mercer can talk about that, and actually Christy and David know. But then a little farther back, you've got maybe some of the shrub materials, and then you can get back to the maritime forest. And looking at aerials and just kind of being out there, you can see some of that, the shrub kind of establishing itself. And we're talking about, maybe trying to give that a little bit of a head start, and maybe bringing some of those, more bushier shrub materials, and trying to maybe plant them in, maybe 100 feet back, on the secondary dune or something, and really try to establish that area. If the erosion ever got back there, then those are much better at retaining sand, and the root systems are much better. Okay, Chrissy, next one. And then this is just from 2000 to 2017, just kind of the overall comparison of where the town is now versus where it was in 2000. And basically, the shoreline is much better than it was in 2000. It's over 150, over to 250 feet seaward of where it was in 2000. So the beach from the entire end looks really good. The east end and the central reach, and then again we're seeing this west end it's worse than it was in 2000. Which is this is the only area of the beach that's worse than it was 18 years ago. So that's why it does have a big fat dune system, but it's still pretty interesting. You can see how it kind of stands out along everything else, and obviously the nourishment activities over here are helping, and hopefully this is. With the Central Reach project, we should see some long-term, benefits for the next few years over this way, and so that should help that out. But then obviously we get, Florence and a Michael and sort of things like that, and even just this storm last Saturday where we had that, we just have to kind of continue to monitor and kind of keep our fingers crossed, I guess.
Do you have any idea why that would be occurring?
Which
That little west end pocket that is the trouble spot. Do you think it's also weird that Oak Island is having erosion in the same analogous?
It's interesting that there's, because the west end of Oak Island and the west end of Holden Beach, they both seem to. Now the west end of Oak Island, and it does seem to be a little more erosional than it used to be.
And isn't it right where the island kind of turns a little bit? I mean, that tip of the west end sort of turns. Same thing on Oak Island. That tip sort of turns a little bit.
Yeah. So, and then obviously, and their houses are much closer to the edge of that dune. So they got sandbags out there and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Do you think this is inlet related?
May I make an observation, because I lived there as a private citizen? I watched all summer, because they did do the dredge this last year. And I can see, I watch the sea all the time from upstairs. And contrary to the last couple years, where a lot of time you're looking outside, you're watching the sea, and you can sort of see the currents east to west. Everything all summer, and this week again, everything is flowing west to east. And I don't know if it's the big sandbar that's on the east side of the inlet, that when it's starting to flow from west to east, does that block everything that used to come down onto us? But it's been a really strange 6 to 8 months watching the ocean do the opposite in my mind of what we always say. And is that inlet related?
Yeah, because it's actually interesting as you talk about that, is that the Shallotte Inlet dredging project.
It was last spring.
Well, and then the biggest one they did was about 1.8 million cubic yards, and that was right around 2000, 2001, and that caused problems at the east end. Since then, they have been pulling 600,000 cubic yards of material out of there every 5 years. And then now this is kind of doing, now they do monitoring of that. And I haven't looked at the most recent monitoring of that report. I guess I will look into that.
It's a non-expert's observation of things don't look to be flowing the way understood they normally float, you know?
And then we are going to, for our modeling and analysis project for Lockwood Folly, we're going to look at some of the more recent wave buoy data and look at maybe there is some sort of just subtle trend in wave direction over, a whole year that is, just changing it a little bit and sending the sand a little more west to east more often than east to west or that sort of thing.
I mean,
So
what we're talking about is like from 1250, 1260 to 1310. It's like this. I just happen to live at 1298, so I see what's going on a lot, but it's just been ever since Matthew, we just keep in this sort of we're just getting like cut out. It's just like a little circle of cutout, and the dunes and people's walkways keep getting pushed back, and the POA's walkways keep getting pushed back. And right now on the west end, if you go down there to Holden Beach West, there are only 2 walkways that you can actually see coming over what used to be dunes, and both of them need to come down because of last weekend's storm. So 2 years ago when you went there and looked down, you saw like 8 to 10 big-ass walkways coming over dunes with steep steps, and they have all been taken back because they just kept getting cut back. So everybody's decided to wait until after this year's nor'easter season to see where we are and, put things back together. It's a very limited area, but it's been very, very significant. I mean, we've lost a dune in Matthew, and we're at risk, I think, of losing the second one in that section. But we still got lots of depth, but I personally think some stuff needs to get going, either on a personal level of the front row owners in West End, or some help from the town to sort of firm up some breaches that have formed, or if we don't do it, we will lose that second dune.
Hey, Fran, can I ask you one more question? That major dredging that was done of the Shallotte Inlet back toward 2000.
Yep.
I don't know if you monitor Ocean Isle or not, but I mean, the erosion on the east end of Ocean Isle is, a nightmare.
Yes.
Do you think it was because of, or do you think that was a contributing factor to the severity of that?
It's kind of when you dig a big hole like that, and then they put the sand on that beach on the Ocean Isle, so that obviously there's an immediate benefit, but then there is maybe a little more subtle long-term detriment to using that sand source, and that's the one thing. A lot of research and things you want to bring kind of new sand into the system. You want to go offshore or even upland, versus when you're taking sand from one part of the system and moving it to another part, you created a hole where that's got to fill in now before the system keeps working again. So or even if you go and get that material in the flood shoal back in here, where that's kind of it's washed out of the system at that point when it's back in near the intercoastal waterway. So bringing that out is a good idea as well. But yeah, when you're taking material right here and then placing it somewhere else, just in the same system, it's important to really kind of analyze it, and that's kind of not ideal, really. But obviously it helps for navigation, and that's one big benefit. And then it's a really easy way to get sand, because it's the pipeline distance is a lot of determines how costly a project can be. And so when you're right there, and the disposal area is right there, it's a very affordable project. And then so you do have to, and then even the Corps has kind of gone over some things where basically they did a study on how much material you could take out of the inlet before you kind of destabilize it. Mm-hmm. And they did say here for Lockwood Folly, they said about 250,000 cubic yards a year you could probably take out without disrupting it, and that is what the county is proposing, versus that 600,000 cubic yards a year, which is probably borderline too much. Mm-hmm. Especially I'm going to have to go back and look at about a 2008 report, and they kind of looked at everything, the sediment budgets, and how much they thought they could pull out of the inlets without really messing them up.
Okay. With everyone's permission, we're just gonna allow questions from the audience. Is that okay with everybody?
Sure.
Dolly, you had a-
I think he has one
This
more
is
slide.
Yeah, there's just last one, but I'll
Okay.
just. And then basically just what we're going, we have the Lockwood Folly Inlet Crossing, and this is kind of the project that's going to Oak Island this year. And then there's the Bend Widener, which probably Oak Island is going to expand. Basically, it's just the skinny part right now that the Corps is going to pay for. But there's more material out there, and we haven't heard from them yet, and I'm not sure. And then the Corps, the bids for this project came in 25% over the government estimate, so then the Corps had to do some extra decision-making on whether they had to rebid it or they just accept it and go. And I have not heard anything
I'm gonna
that.
comment later if you want
Okay,
just.
okay.
Yeah.
And then
That's on just the skinny part, not the
no,
bend
that's from
widener?
this fat part. So they're taking estimated about 90,000 cubic yards out of the skinny part. We think there's probably double that, another 90,000 cubic yards in the fat part, the Bend Widener.
That's just the mouth, right?
It's really just the intercoastal waterway. That's really only the Corps for this particular project. All the Corps is worried about is the intercoastal waterway.
Okay.
And this is one of their kind of quote-unquote lean budget years, but their next fiscal year, they supposedly have a lot more money. And that next Newburgh meeting, it'll be late in mid-December, and I'm sure we'll get some updates then.
And I saw in today's paper that they just received an extra 9.6 million.
Oh, really? Yeah. So, it does seem like next year they're going to have some. And then, see, this is out here. This right here is the collision regulation line, the Coast Guard coal regs line, which pretty much the really expensive dredges can work out beyond there, besides the small little specialized dredges that the Corps uses, the side caster and the shallow draft hopper. And this is what the county is proposing to do. This is, 8 feet deep, 150 feet wide, and they want to go to 12 feet deep and keep it about the same spot. But in here, those historical shipwrecks is going to be an issue for, you got to stay away from that. So I guess you'd have to align it out here a little bit more. But this is kind of, on, and apparently Chrissy just got an email today about this project. So this is kind of on the front burner. And then we got the Florence and Michael mitigation and coordination, and Christy and David are kind of heading that up, and I'm assisting when needed. And then Central Reach planning long term. The town will probably need to. We recommend the town look for more sand sources offshore sometime in the next few years. The Central Reach the bar area does have about 500,000 cubic yards of material in it, and it's good material. But then, Oak Island has expressed interest in using that bar area. So, sooner or later the town will have to go out and look. And we do have a good database on the source out there, the Central Reach bar area, and then a few other bar areas. And now that we know kind of, we've seen how this material came and looked, I think we'll have a little bit more information and we can go out there and do that. So, and then that's it. So I can take questions now.
Dolly, you had a question, and I know
Well,
I got
it
one.
goes back to history. The dredging that they did in 2000 or 08, did not that dredge cause the west end of Holden Beach to erode, and the water was almost up to those last two houses? And maybe they overcorrected this time, and they're causing this. But I remember those last two houses on the west end were waterfront, very much waterfront lots on not this past dredge, but the dredge before.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard that the Miami Vice House had to almost sandbag because of their pool being so close to the last vestige of dune.
Mm-hmm.
But again, over 10 years, that all
Filled back in.
in.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is around 1976, there, on New Year's Day, there was one of these astrological events that occurred here, and it wiped every walkway off of this beach, and we had almost 3 feet of water under our house. In March of about 93, I'm guessing, that year, I remember it was March, they had what they called a winter hurricane that started in the mountains of North Carolina and came and brought like 80-mile-an-hour winds here. And I remember people who lived on Tarpon talking about the waves on Tarpon. And again, it took every walkway off the beach.
We had foam on our windows. Foam covered all the windows in 93.
And this last Saturday, we had 2 inches of water. Ron and Melanie Champion had 6 inches of water. But I think it was more of a marsh waterway. The water did not come from the ocean this time. But there is, and we've noticed a significant difference in tides over this past year.
Yeah. Right. No, because when you look at the predicted versus the actual, it seems like, it's at least, the predicted is up like 6 inches below, and then obviously like Saturday, more than a foot, and it's consistent. And you think somehow they need to update those predictions, but and I think some of that was that was 93 or 94. That one, I think some of that, So every now and then you can have one of those systems in the spring or the winter.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a hurricane, but that's interesting. It's a good historical.
And I understand that there was a storm offshore. I mean, I didn't know about the storm offshore until after we had the water.
Okay.
Okay, guys, do you have questions?
The one question talking about the West End again. They're talking about doing a dredging project, like the back at where it comes into the intercoastal waterway. So they're gonna put the sand up on the island down there. The Corey talked about.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay. With the sand that they take out of there, I'm wondering if that could have an adverse effect on the West End.
So the intercoastal
waterway
portion
back there.
Right. The intercoastal waterway and like the Shallotte River kind of area, and they're putting it on Long Island.
Right.
Probably not. A lot of that material is not beach compatible, so that kind of indicates that maybe there was some of that material did get to the some sandy material from the beach got in there, but a lot of that material is coming from upriver and it's settling out there. So I think that's far enough away from the inlet that it's not really affecting the sand system, the ocean sand system.
Anybody else have questions? I do. My question regarding the West End is, you address on page 36 that the dredging that inlet has negative effects on the West End. And I'm wondering, should we be taking more transects of the West End, similar to what we do on the East End, in order to document erosion, given that there are projects probably coming up that will increase the dredging of that inlet?
I guess we could consider that. The Corps is doing some monitoring for their project, and so we keep an eye on that. But then sometimes when the town of Ocean Isle, they'll sometimes they can get a little more aggressive with their bar areas. So that is one major concern especially with this upcoming project with the Terminal Groin, where I'm not as concerned with the Terminal Groin per se as the bar area, because I think the bar area, if it gets too close to the Holden Beach shoreline, there could be something. And they do have they are going to have to monitor the Holden Beach shoreline. We can kind of look and make sure, and I think they are going to their monitoring is sufficient to really look at it with aerials and with survey data, and it's, for the terminal growing project, they have to, it's pretty rigorous. It's, every 3 months and that sort of thing. So they should be keeping a good eye on it, and we'll get our hands on that data as well and ensure that. But we can kind of just keep that in mind, especially since the West End is showing a little more erosion nowadays than it used to be. So I think, we'll look at that.
Okay. I had a question about figure 2-22, and it's the orientation of the outer channel of the Lockwood Folly.
Okay.
That figure.
Yes, I see it.
2-22, page 227. You see how oriented it is to the southwest? Is
Yes.
that accurate, and is that what we plan to maintain?
So the core basically follows deep water, and
Well, the other figures are, it's more.
yes, it's more straight out. It is. No, but when they follow deep water, no, the alignment has kind of been that way for the last couple of years.
Right, and I think it's very beneficial to us.
Yes, all the research by Dr. Cleary and everything indicates that this alignment is more favorable for the East End, where there's maybe less erosion. It's still erosional, but it's less erosion. Mm-hmm. That's a favorable alignment. And actually, there's probably been like that alignment for 4 years now or so. And the East End has been a little less erosional at that time, but the East End, we have been getting more material on the beach too, with the piggybacks and everything from 2014 and even the core project 2010. So it's also been a correlation with more material being placed on the East End and then this alignment. So it's hard to try to tease out the difference. But even with the modeling that we did in 2012, 2013, we did show a minor benefit of aligning the channel this way. So.
And that wouldn't be modified, the Corps would not modify that, regardless of what dredging project we're talking about. If they were to do a wider, deeper, they would just follow deep water and keep that alignment in the same place, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they should.
Yeah, they wouldn't modify that intentionally anyway.
No, I guess we'll have to keep an eye on and see what the county plans to do. Because this alignment is favorable to staying away from the Civil War wrecks as well.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be a big issue.
And that's more straight out
Yeah.
than to the west.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is the alignment. This is that figure 222. That alignment is kind of
accurate.
The favorable, and that's the favorable alignment for Holden Beach according to kind of data and research. And it does seem.
So we need to work to maintain that alignment and not the straight one even, right?
Yes, but the Corps has their authorizations, and you can ask the Corps to do something, and they're just going to say, we follow deep water. And then you'll ask them, and they'll say, and they don't, they're
political.
Yeah, there's a bureaucracy. Like, they've got their rules, and they authorizations, and they follow them. And so it's even interesting this last time with this whole easement issue with the East End, where they just, usually when they've been doing something for decades, they don't like changing that up, and all of a sudden I thought the East End was in good shape to get that material this winter, and then all of a sudden they changed it up because of some sort of easement issue for some other project. So that was disappointing.
I think we need to be really careful what we ask for, though. Because I know. I guess what you're saying is the data shows that there's a moderate benefit.
Yes. Yeah.
A minor benefit from having the orientation that way. But the reality, since that orientation has been southwest like that, the East End is, in my opinion, order of magnitudes better.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what's interesting is you can watch on Google Earth time-lapse thing, you can watch that orientation of that channel swing, and you can see how beneficial it is to our east end when it's oriented towards southwest.
Yeah. Some of that research, even Dr. Clear's research, where he's just looking at snapshots of aerials every 5 or 10 years. It's difficult, and then sometimes they're saying, okay, well, if it's this way, then the Holden Beach is accretional. If it's that way, Holden Beach is erosional. It's not as binary as, okay, it's over here, it's accretional. But there is a benefit, but it's like it's erosional. Now it's less erosional. Mm-hmm. So obviously it's still a benefit, but it's still, sometimes you'll hear, okay, wait a second, if it's over there, we don't have to worry about anything, but you still do. So.
I was also wondering, I was wondering if our resolution regarding local quality inlet should be included, but really that would be in next year's, correct? Beach monitoring report?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we'll put that in there.
You also mentioned development line on page 212.
Yes.
Can you give us an update on that?
Well, that's the quote unquote static vegetation line, right. And that's basically that first line of vegetation establishes the setback factor along the beach with the Central Reach project, and there are ways to get out of that.
Right.
And as long as the town hasn't really run into any major issues with people saying, okay, they have something to do with their deck or the pool or the house or some sort of thing where as long as the town's not really running into that with on a lot by lot basis, then the static vegetation line is probably fine. But if the town starts running into issues with permitting and issues with that setback factor that starts affecting development in a way that the town doesn't think it's a fair way, then there are some ways to go about that and kind of establishing your own line. So there's some flexibility there.
We got a really favorable read on the static vegetation line, correct? Because it was taken in August before we had Matthew.
Yes.
And it was a great line.
Yes, yeah, and the town, should be commended. The town has done a really good job of not only putting sand out there, but putting vegetation out there and having that vegetation. And then obviously even with something when Matthew comes through and eats up 40 acres of dune grass, it's still it's protective, and it also helps with that buffer and keeping that setback factor
further out.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. So
okay, now I just wanted to confirm that because I'm happy with the static vegetation line where it is, and I'm not enthused about a development line, right?
Yeah.
Just watching the problems that other municipalities have gone through.
Yeah.
Oak Island, watching them trying to get theirs moved around.
Yeah, because then obviously, I agree.
Okay. Now you mentioned also in several spots that there are permits. You're recommending that we extend them, we sync them up, that kind of thing. Is that the plan going forward?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I've coordinated with Christy on that, and just make sure we have an active state and core permit. The state one they gave was I'll triple check, but it says 2019. Is that correct, Christy? You recall?
A couple of them are 2019, but we want to sync them.
Yeah, I think your idea is syncing it with the Army Corps of Engineers permit, so that 2021 would be good for everything we're dealing with.
Yeah.
But you're checking with DCM currently.
Yes.
Okay, it just says recommends, and I wanted to make sure that
Yes, because we're doing that now. Before the end of the year, December. Okay,
then my last question is regarding where you talk about the terminal groin, and I know this was discussed at the BOC meeting, but this is kind of a historical document.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure that we document correctly why that was turned down.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering if it was turned down because it was possibly going to increase the risk of erosion downdrift, and that our current strategy was working regarding erosion and cost. So, that was my take on it.
Okay.
But see, the downdrift erosion, you know, the where we put that was we were pretty careful where we put that, and you know, and then when you even say downdrift, which direction were you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about towards the Central Beach area.
Oh, see, that's it wasn't going to in that little area. The net transport is actually into Lockwood Folly Inlet, so downdrift is technically the inlet. So, and that was, you know, so that was, it was not the sediment, the regional sediment transport doesn't go from Oak Island to Holden Beach to Ocean Isle.
Well, I mean, I don't want to debate the whole terminal.
Well, see, and I was trying to keep this a little more technical and based on kind of our experience and our documents and everything. And I think that was from an engineering standpoint. That's kind of why I said why that.
Yep.
I know there was a lot of deliberation, and I was here for a few of those meetings, and I know that some of the other opposition brought in some of their arguments, and it's a controversial topic, and I tried to kind of keep it dry, and not really try to get into anything
and I don't want you
controversial.
guys to get into that either. I just want to make sure, since it's a historical document that we refer to, I go back to the old ones. I mean, I assume you guys go back too. To compare, like I compared this one to our previous and that kind of thing, just to. But that was my only comment.
Okay. I don't know if I can refer to some other. Okay.
Maybe you could put that was what I was going to suggest. I mean, not that ATM would endorse, but maybe you could put a small paragraph in there that at least documents what some of the other data
refer to some of the other
commissioners'
meeting notes and that sort of thing, and then
to refer to their justification for stopping it, just
so
so it's documented.
Okay.
Well, it just said, this is why it was turned down, which really that wasn't why it was turned down.
Well, okay. I was here for a lot of those, and again, I was trying to keep it. Keep it non-controversial and just keep it technical. But maybe we could just add, a list of 4 or 5 different commissioners' meetings or even findings or resolutions, and just say, please see these for additional information.
That would be helpful.
Again, private citizen, scientific report writer, I might try to keep it very basic too, based upon risk, benefit, and economic considerations. Board of Commissioners decided to, and keep it like that. I never want to tell an engineer scientist what to put in a report based upon their opinion of the technical data, but the terms risk, benefit, and economic analysis
I like that verbiage.
Cover what we went
that
through
kind of covers.
without actually demanding any additional opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's a logical way, and it's an appropriate way, I think, to position just in a couple sentences without having to quote anything in more in depth. Again, having written a lot of reports where you're being sensitive to things. There's a few buzz phrases, and risk, benefit, and economic analysis can be woven in and not have to get into a lot.
Okay.
Well, the line in there right now says under threat of appeal and additional costs. So I don't know that the appeal part was ever in there, but
Okay, and then that was
I
maybe
just
my
wanted to bring
take,
it up. You guys
because I
can-
know I'm almost positive it was going to be appealed, and that was going to be just long and drawn out and expensive.
But
So-
we made the statement that was not what drove our
Okay,
decision. The
okay.
town made that statement, as I recall.
Okay,
So
and I said under threat. Okay, no, okay, all right, I got it.
There may have been a threat of appeal, but that's not the reason the
Yes.
commissioners voted the
I
way
got
they did.
okay. That was all my questions.
Okay.
Thank you for this.
Sure.
though.
Thank you, Fran.
Sure.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have more questions?
You're going to have this presentation memorized by the time this one's over.
No? Okay, so that wraps up number 4, annual beach monitoring report from Fran. Next, discussion and plan for comprehensive long-term plan. You want me to take that, Dean?
Yes.
Can I just make one comment?
Yes.
David and I briefly met with Dean yesterday to go over some things he's been working on, but I would suggest as you guys look at this, that you either might go with, you establish your mission, vision, goals, and then let that drive where you're going with the different components, or you work backwards and decide what your components are going to be, and those are your goals, and then work back into your vision and mission. But either way, I think you need to have your vision, mission, goals, or you're going to end up with a fragmented report.
That works. Well, we've got some samples, that we can model off of. But I think, kind of where I'm coming from is, I'd like to see us start working on this, start moving forward on a plan, both long-term and short-term, and kind of go from there. We have, the way I view it, we have 2 inlet hazard areas, 2 ends of the island that have different needs and are managed differently. And then we have kind of 3 general beaches. We have the eastern reach, is what I'm calling it, which is basically from the inlet hazard area to 240 OBW, where we started the central reach. And then we have central reach, which runs from 240 to, say, 780, which is our engineered beach, right? And then we've got a western reach, which is from there on to the inlet hazard area. Does that make sense? And then for each of those, we needed to address how we were going to manage those, because they're all different and they all need different treatment. Their needs are different, their solutions are going to be different. We could also sync it up with how Fran has his. You've got them divided up a little bit differently. I think yours is more.
I think overview-wise, I would just say the 3 sections is probably easier for planning.
Okay.
East, west, and central.
Yeah.
With the central being our engineered portion, and then the west being the unengineered beach.
So
Right.
781 west.
Right, to the inlet hazard area, and then our inlet hazard
And then
area.
from 240 east.
Yes. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, because I like to, for the town, like that west area, I call, usually like to refer to that as the unmanaged area. A lot of times, a lot of people will, like, even the beach and inlet management plan, they come out. Holden Beach is always like the entire, 8 to 9 miles of shoreline. They always say it's engineered beach, so a lot of people always forget that that last 3 miles is really is unmanaged.
Yeah.
And that's where there was the leatherback turtle nest there and all that sort of thing. Even though leatherbacks can kind of go anywhere they want, but yeah. So I think it's good that the West End, but obviously now the West End might need a little bit more management.
Right.
But,
and then, Jeff.
Citizen Joe. So I definitely love the idea of this 3-tier approach, because each of those are a little different, each of them. The thing is, as I sit here, and then when I sit in your chairs up there too, I say to myself, when is the red light going to come on for the East End, so we don't get into an issue where we go back to 2005. Based on the data that we're currently collecting, based on the data that we currently have, I almost want to sit there and plot and say to myself, in 2019 or 2020, right, bingo, the light goes off, we got a problem.
mm-hmm.
We got a problem. So it's like, how do we work toward that to prevent that from occurring and happening with the data, using the data that we have available?
Yes.
Data is so meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the county seems to want to put material on the beach on the East End here, basically a year from now, and I think that's probably from a good planning perspective, trying to a year from now, the next winter dredging window. There's I think there's probably be some activity on the east end to kind of shore that up.
We've got some new update coming here in a little bit.
Great.
Well,
Again,
okay.
just one more comment. If we're not the ones driving that, the concern that I have, we need to drive that. Let's not depend upon the county, in my mind, to give us something, or the Corps, or the state, or the federal, or anything else. We need to be the designers and owner of that. Thank you.
Anyway, for each of these areas then, like for the inlets, I think we need to address the goals in the future state. What do we want to see these areas look like, and what plan do we want? We need to look at the historical perspective. For example, with the inlets, we need the dredging history so that we know when it was dredged, where it was placed, who paid for it, what did we pay for it, how much was it per yard, that kind of thing. Which we've got some of that in here, but not all of it. So I'm going to be, and I've gone back to the audits and tried to tease that out, and I've not been completely successful. But that's something I think we want. And then a short-term plan and a long-term plan, how we would cover the funding, and then take all that, boil it together, and come up with a draft plan with recommendations and options. So that, because we don't make those decisions, the BOC makes those decisions, and then they would, I would like to see us go with options. Here's option A, here's option B, here's option C, and here's the pros and cons. This is good for this reason. This one's more expensive, but it's sooner. That kind of a thing. And then do the same thing for those 3 beaches. That's kind of where I'm looking.
So you said we had samples. You had mentioned via email one sample. Are there others?
Yeah, there are. I can email those to everybody.
That'd be great.
I can know that.
So we'll need some time to digest those.
Yes.
You guys realize you can't comment on those digital meetings.
That's right.
They,
Say that again?
you could not comment. If anybody replied, all it would be considered a digital meeting.
Right.
So you need to, I would send those to me and let me send those out.
Okay.
So if you send something to us, can we reply to all? Okay, sorry.
That's why I didn't reply to your email.
I know. I
Okay.
sent one just to you, though, not
Oh, I
anyone
didn't realize
else.
that.
I knew that, so I sent one, yeah.
Okay, are there any other comments on a plan?
Yeah, okay, so if you send those plans to us and we have a chance to digest them, I'd like to know, how will we physically work on this plan? Will we all take an area to work on, and then can we have some kind of a workshop where we're all together? I feel like, I realize, this is just my being naive, but I feel like our hands are tied a little bit when it comes to trying to do a group activity. Because, like, I'll take a piece and work on it, Dean and everybody, but then we got to come together and share it. And so, do we do that at a workshop, a special meeting? Do we do it at one of these meetings? How do we share information without getting into the open meeting problem?
I don't know. I think my thought is that we would each take pieces of it to work on and bring it back to the group in a meeting, and then...
In a regular meeting like
Right.
this. And
So
maybe present our pieces.
Right. I'm working on the dredging part right now.
Okay.
So I finish up the dredging part, and I distribute it to Christy, who can then distribute it to all of you, and then when we bring it back, we'll discuss it.
Okay.
How's that?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
A part of this is that it's more foundational in education for us, that we need to all come up to speed.
Okay.
That's kind of my assessment. We are, massive learning curve
Yes.
that we're all going through.
Yes.
And, I have to say I appreciate everyone's,
Lots of reading.
and I appreciate that from you guys. I just wanted to say that. You guys are awesome. But that is all I had on discussion and comprehensive plan. Does anybody else have anything?
So just to reinforce what Christy had said, I mean, I had met with David and Christy to talk about, the hurricane
Yes.
list. I was trying to paint a list. There's a list of all the storms, hurricanes that have either
Right.
hit Holden or been near to Holden, with the hope that we could line up with, here's how much it actually costs us.
Yes.
Or here's how
And
much.
how far back
sand-
did you go
How
with
much
that?
sand have we lost? Well, I set the spreadsheet up to go back to the year 2000,
Okay.
but then I also went back in time and took the 20 worst storms that North Carolina has ever seen and added to those. So some of those are in the past 20 years, but others are even further back,
Okay.
kind of thing. But now in talking with David and Christy, David kind of had a sense of, if we are going to try to put numbers and that sort of information, he can take us back to like 2008. Everything beyond that probably gets a little sketchier and harder to pull together. So there probably aren't going to be too many big storms with, actual alignment with, in the ATM report, Fran regularly, says, Hannah and this one and that one, and those are probably the ones that are on the radar, or were on the radar for Holden Beach that we could, align with numbers. So there probably isn't going to be a wealth of material there. But as we had this conversation, it got into, well, what are the facets of this long-term plan actually going to include? How relevant is this in that?
Has that data to it?
We talked about the ATM report, and that Fran has, these are the things we're doing on a yearly basis, and we had Central Reach, we have Central Reach 2, other than these storms coming in and whacking us and us maybe having to rejigger and do some quicker, fixes. How much really can we do long-term planning-wise beyond Central Reach 2? We're already we try to dredge Lockwood Folly every 2 years, and that's been the mode of operation, so that seems like that's a major thing on the long-term plan. But
Right.
when you start talking financial and
Yeah,
that
as
sort of
far as,
thing.
I just think the work you're
we
doing on
we thought maybe we should reset and say, what are these plans, the short-term and long-term, what facets do they need to actually hit on?
Right.
Vegetation, sand,
right.
etc. So that's something to think about as we start this activity. We should all be in alignment on the facets.
Yeah, and like, one of the things that's, like Joe used the term red light, we were losing the sand to Oak Island for the 2-year dredging project,
Yeah.
right? So technically speaking, that pushes us out to 21 before we get sand, unless something happens in the interim and
Yes.
something changes. Now, there's another project brewing, and that we're going to talk about in a little bit, that may help us resolve that issue and get us some sand next year and not have to wait until 2021 for that. And that would really be part of the definitely be part of the short-term plan for us. Because that's
Well, just so you guys are aware, what I've done is whenever we talk about these projects, where they're going to be, a couple of years out, I put all those in a spreadsheet with all the information on the left-hand side, and then have a picture at the bottom so we can talk about where the sand is coming from.
okay.
So that I can scroll it back and forth, and then I just kind of keep that spreadsheet updated all the time because it changes all the time. So I'll be glad to share that at some point.
What's the
too.
difference between you emailing us all that and Christy emailing us all that?
Ethical.
If I send it out, then I'll be able to see if everybody replies all or not. I just think it's better if it
Okay.
comes to me and it goes through the town
Okay.
out to you guys. And
Okay.
it will make me feel better.
Okay.
Okay, were there anything else you guys wanted to add on the long-term plan?
Just a question for moving forward for next month, because I feel like this will be on the agenda for a while. So
Yes.
when it's sent out, are you asking them to look at different samples and then come with ideas for things that they may interest them to work on next month? Like, so when they get it, they know what they're supposed to do with it coming
Right,
forward
well,
for next
and
month.
more, that we'll have a framework that we can work from. That people can see other samples of what people have done and work from there. Does that make sense? Would that be helpful?
Mm-hmm.
And you and David hopefully can look at it as well and, you know, give feedback. I think you're missing this, or, you know, if there's areas you want to have conversations about.
Yeah, and if you've got samples of what you're thinking, or Fran, if you've got samples that you could send, could you send those to Christy?
Yes.
You know what we're aiming for, so.
We're aiming for a short and long-term recommendations to the Board of Commissioners of, you know, what we can be doing. And also mostly things that we can be doing in addition to what we normally do. You know, new things that we could be doing, ideas of new things that we could be doing.
For example, the vegetation.
Or examples of, yes.
Okay.
Vicky?
Yes?
Yeah. If you'd rather me wait to comments, okay, but, and that's fine.
Is it regarding the plan?
What you're talking about.
Why don't you just go ahead and, as long as we're on the topic.
In response to Dean talking about the different hurricanes and the amount of money, the most damage that's been done here was recently was 89, and David came after that, so you don't have those figures. But there was truly a lot of damage on this beach as a result of that particular storm.
Floyd.
I think you meant 99.
No, Hugo.
Hugo?
Was 89.
Hugo.
Oh, okay.
And that's the year we had the foot of snow and the frozen weather for.
Right. Yeah. That was down in Charleston too.
But all the way to Savannah.
Oh.
The other thing is, I know what you're trying to do in making it exact, but this weather is so fickle. I mean, you look at Florence, we look at Matthew, we had 3 feet of water under the house. Florence, which was a stronger hurricane, we had no water under the house. We have a normal Saturday in November, and we have 2 inches of water under the house. So you cannot predict what is going to happen. You're dealing with a fluid thing, and I guess don't expect fast results, particularly dealing with the Corps of Engineers. The other thing is, I've heard none of you talk about the climate report that just was released, and at some point that needs to be studied, because Miami is already dealing with, they've had Holland in with reverse pumping to get water out. So at some point that needs to be looked at to see what the impact on sand, whether we're going to continue to bring sand on this beach to have it washed out with the sea level rising. I know it's not going to impact me on my lifetime. But
You never know, it's exponential nowadays.
That's right. So that's all.
So I would love to add a column to the spreadsheet for that kind of feedback. You know, I hear Alan talk, I hear yourself talk, you know, details that I can't get out of the NOAA website and information, and Fran, you know, you as well. You know, there's those kinds of details. How many breaches did the island have in '89? We can look at the scale of that storm and get a feel for, okay, if we have storms of that scale in the future, those are the kinds of things we could expect.
But your dollar in '89 is not equivalent to the dollar.
Yes, so the dollars are less important, but at least it's a data point, you know, kind of thing.
Right. That's all.
The more people that can add to it, the richer it becomes.
Okay, then moving on, Christy, we're up to you.
Okay. We're with status update on beach and inlets. So currently this morning as we speak, David was supposed to be in Raleigh, but we got a call early this week that the state wanted to bring the FEMA beach tech to do a preliminary damage assessment for Michael on the beach. It makes it sound as if Brunswick County's declaration hinges in part on Holden Beach's damages. So he felt the need to be on that, and I was in here and this meeting conflicted with that. So he is out with that team now.
On our beach?
On our beach. The current, well, he left at 9, but
Yeah.
I don't know if he's back yet. But the current Michael numbers from Fran that we supplied the state was $5,623,046. Going back to Florence, we have been coordinating with FEMA on a weekly basis. Those meetings are lasting about 2 hours. We had one on Monday morning, and they, like us, with our surveys, keep their storms separate. So the Florence tech advisor for the beach is now in Wilmington and will be visiting us, I think, first, probably of the beaches is what it sounded like. But that's to be scheduled. We're making ourselves available Monday or Tuesday. And they're going to be coming and doing their assessment for Florence from the federal perspective.
What was the number for Florence?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Florence number is $7,797,917.
Does the Michael number include the setting up of the pipes and, did you say a large portion of the...
The large portion of that is mobilization. It's about $4 million for both of them. That's not the sand number. It's about $4 million for mobilization based on the going rate. Do you want to comment on any more from your numbers?
It's a conservative estimate, assuming separate nourishment projects. Trying to just make sure we're conservative in terms of,
right.
And then we come under, then that's great.
But if we were able to remediate at the same time,
that would make sense, and then that would save money.
Yep.
And the town would, we would probably recommend that.
And the state wasn't talking about that the other day when they were here. They wanted to keep it separate. They get their declarations done, and then we'll see what happens. So at this point, everything's looked at separately. In regards to the Inlet, we did hear at the NC Byways Conference, which a lot of you were at, that from Pam Castens and Bob Kiesler in their report that the contract they thought was going to be awarded to Southwinds for the AIWW crossing, but that it did come in over budget. They were still working some things out. I did reach out to the Corps yesterday in an email to Jim Medlock and Brendan Dooley to see if there was an update on that, because that would have occurred last week or before Thanksgiving. And as of this meeting, I did not have a response back yet. Also inquired as to any meeting that they talked about as far as if they were willing to cut the contractor loose or let either of the towns talk, and any update on the merit coming for the navigation purposes. And again, I didn't get a response back yet. Okay. But what I do have as of this morning, and it fits into this discussion, I did not make copies because it did come in this morning. David called me in before he left. We talked about the best way to handle this. And in order to bring the public, the commissioners, because they don't have this information yet either, and you guys all up to speed, I'm just going to read this email. I think that in order for you guys to do what's number 3 in your ordinance from the Board of Commissioners, which is to evaluate the feasibility and cost of benefits of proposed dredging projects, that this board may want to consider a special meeting prior to the Board of Commissioners December meeting. This is David's opinion too. I'm speaking for both of us at the moment since he's not here. In order to give them your opinion, because they will have to act in December, is what it sounds like. This email went from Steve Stone, the Deputy Director at the Brunswick County, to both David and David Kelly at Oak Island. Carbon copied was Ann Hardy. Gentlemen, the county has received a grant award contract from DEQ DWR for the Lockwood Folly Navigation Project that was submitted this past summer. As I think you both know, the application indicated that the county would work with one of your communities to directly place the resultant beach quality material estimated to be in the range of 250,000 cubic yards before the county accepts the grant, which will provide state funding of $2,754,650, but require local funding of $1,377,350. We wish to receive your feedback. The county's original thought was that the county would propose to pay 25% of the required local share, or $344,338, with the remaining 75%, or $1,033,013, to be paid by the entity receiving the placed sand. While it is technically possible to place sand from a single project on both islands, it would increase the cost significantly, and a piggyback contractor might not have time to do so. Therefore, it would be our suggestion, if we move forward with the project and that it is successful, that the future project place sand on the alternate island, presuming parties are receptive to such an arrangement. I have attached a copy of the funding agreements for your review. Obviously, if we got this morning, we have not had time to review those. DWR staff are aware that the project likely could not occur before the fall of 2019 and have indicated that our extension of the period performance could likely be granted. Please let us know your municipality's level of interest in participating in the project and any concerns that you may have. I would hope to have your feedback by early January 2019. Thanks, and don't hesitate to contact me with questions. So, since you guys have Fran here, I thought that the best thing to do, David and I were both talking, that you have a time to listen to what his concerns were about this deepening and widening project.
So this is the blue in the picture?
This is the deepening and widening that they were talking about. In your resolution, it spoke to us asking them for additional modeling. Those kinds of questions are things that you could ask him now. And then if you wanted to discuss this, again, you would likely need to call a special meeting, because it sounds as if in order to give them an answer, the board's going to have to make a decision on this in their December meeting.
Another quick question. How much do we normally get out of that inlet compared to the 250K they're talking about?
What's that?
130?
No, because usually when they dredge that, they dredge it with the Murden, and it's usually 30 to 40, maybe 50,000 cubic yards. It's pretty minor, and then they can only put it near shore with the Murden.
So that's what we typically have been putting on the east end?
No, we've been typically putting the material from the AIWW area. This was the one that Oak Island's taking.
Okay.
That's what we're doing.
And
This out here has just been the side caster.
How much is that usually?
Including the bend widener, anywhere from usually 120,000 to 180,000.
That's what I was thinking of, because the last time the pipe was there run on the beach and it got slurried, that was about 133,000, wasn't it?
I think so. Well, they did it, it was right after the Central Reach project, and it was maybe 130, 140,000.
So we'd really be getting our bang for our buck, doubling that volume.
Yeah, but if that sand cannot go, that sand has to go on the east end. That sand cannot go to Oak Island, because I'm really worried about, downrift impacts.
So what's the timeline for the Oak Island,
especially if Oak Island's getting this?
When are they getting that?
And then even in some talks
This
with the
winter.
county,
This winter.
if the Oak Island's getting that, then Holden Beach has to get this.
So it's not like
Holden
they
Beach
can
might
jump.
have to, we might recommend them appealing the town.
They can't jump up right away and say, add it to the sand
And
you're
then,
already moving right now.
The Oak Island has always been like, let's share, even though, I kind of felt like this was kind of,
Cheap shot.
this was Holden Beach's sand, and the Holden Beach had a really nice little system set up. We had the Central Reach project, and we had, getting, a big, since 2010, putting, anywhere, because before 2010, they were only putting maybe about 80,000 or 50,000 from here to there. Had a nice little system set up, and now Oak Island just is screwing everything up.
Just blew that away.
So it's making this deeper. First of all, even getting it permitted is going to. They're trying to look back in old 1970s documents from the Corps saying this inlet was always authorized to be 12 feet deep, even though it's only dredged to 8 feet deep. And I think that's their angle. So they're going to want a minor permit modification, or just like say this is no big deal. In reality, it could really get drawn out, where you get the Civil War wrecks, essential fish habitat. Some of our modeling in 2012, 2013, we looked at a deeper, wider channel, and there was more water was getting into the Lockwood Valley River,
and so that could potentially change the salinity levels in the river. And if natural resources doesn't bring that up, then maybe that's not an issue. Or that could be all sorts of monitoring and mitigation. The Civil War shipwrecks, you really can't get anywhere near those. So that would probably be good because that alignment of the newer, deeper would probably be over on the Holden Beach side. So I think it's maybe something worthwhile, but if that sand's not going on the east end, then I think it's not a good thing for the Holden Beach. No, it's not.
It's only a good thing if we get the sand.
Yeah.
So the modeling.
And then even then, there's a little bit of trade-offs we were talking about before, where you're taking sand from one part of the system and just moving it, and it's almost but it's only 250,000 cubic yards, and there has been some research that says that is
a safe threshold.
And okay, yeah, and it's not 600,000 like they're doing from Shalot.
So the modeling you're doing right now, taking the sand from the waterway and putting it on their beach, you're looking at how fast that's filling the inlet, or how is it disturbing the Civil War wrecks and covering them up, that kind of thing? When do you anticipate that modeling work will be done?
We're working on it. It's probably still a good 6 weeks.
Because if we get into some kind of debate
yeah,
with Oak Island,
that's concentrating on this back area here. A lot of times when we run the model, we will start the model this way, and then the channel usually does migrate a little more to the centrally. But we'll start it over here, and then we'll start it there, and usually it starts migrating. It's almost like the unmanned fire hose where it can kind of do it at once. And then, so we're not really looking at this, but as we were talking about before, with that alignment, we did see some minor benefit to the erosion. And if it's only 250,000 cubic yards, it's going to need to be studied. It's going to be a long permitting process that the county's going to do. But $250,000, and then that would be 250,000 cubic yards, and then that would be $1 million for the town of Holden Beach. So that's $4 a cubic yard, which is good. But obviously that's because the state, and that's the one, the state with their paying for 2/3 of this. It's not if it were that's a $4 million project, it's probably going to be overall. They're assuming it's $16 a cubic yard, but it could even be $20 a cubic yard, which is expensive for a small project like this, where I would say that's not economically worth it. But with the state ponying up 2/3 of the cost, it all of a sudden becomes worth it. So, I would say, but the town would look at it, and that's a good amount of material. But that material has to go on the east end.
But we have to assume Oak Island's going to say we want it too.
Yeah.
Right. So then.
But we've got to be able to justify, given the current scenario with the Corps and what they're getting, that they're getting the sand we're not getting, that we've gotten for decades.
Yep. Yeah.
But also on top of that, if your models show that no, it's worse for the inlet and it's worse for Holden Beach and it's worse for the Civil War shipwrecks, that's good data to add to the conversation as well.
Sure.
Right.
On top of they got it last time versus us.
So it sounds like we need to jump on this right away, because a worst case scenario is this project gets approved and Oak Island gets the sand. That is a worst case scenario that we can't let happen.
Yes.
When we talk about the setup cost, what if we came to an agreement, you get half, we get half? How much money does that add to it to move the pipe across the...
Right. Well, in that email, they said that they don't think that would be too expensive, but in reality, it might not be so much because the pipeline distance is pretty short, and so putting 1,000 feet of pipeline should, and unfortunately, dredging costs are wildly variable, and a lot of times because the latest Vogue Carteret County, they just only got one bid for their $1 million project, and so they got to rebid it. and then that sort of thing. So, sometimes, and then even with the town, when we bid the Central Reach project, the first time we only got one bid and had to rebid it, and then we got 3 after that. And then, fortunately, it was competitive, and the town got a good price, but, so it's tough. But
what I'm also hearing you say is that we could have some complications, the Corps could have some complications with the permitting process.
Yeah.
Because of the
Yes.
volume of sand that's
Right.
coming
Right.
out and the deepening and
And
widening, there could be other complications.
And then I even have my doubts that they could even get this, because first of all, they've got to get the permit.
Mhm.
And the permit, even if they submitted the permit, we'll say January,
Yeah.
they might be able to get it by July, I would imagine. And then you've got to bid it, and then the bidding process usually about 3 or 4 months, and assuming that you get good bids and everything like that.
We're
And then
looking
so
at
it
least a year
can
away.
happen. It can happen. But, and then all of a sudden you throw in a hurricane or something like that, and it throws everything off.
Mhm.
So, and even then that 6-month permitting, that could go to a year easy by just, some concerns or some, the archaeological, research or something like that. Or they could just say, okay, well, we agree that it was authorized at 12 and we'll just stick with that. I don't really see that happening, but it's going to be tough to happen even a year from now.
So you talk about a special meeting, is that a commissioner's special meeting?
No, a special meeting to weigh in on how, okay. We're gonna have to be able to do some research on this, but I don't know where we're gonna get that research information from in order for this group to weigh in on this topic.
And the only thing that we will have is the grant application and the information that Fran's been able to
has given
provide,
us.
because this is something that hasn't been done. I mean, they're looking at doing something a new way than what it's
Yeah.
been done.
Yep, okay.
So
So-
probably,
I think we
does
need
it make
to-
sense to have this team?
That's totally up to you
Could you
guys.
have a joint meeting where we attend and it's a
just,
commissioner's
I
meeting?
think maybe it is,
'Cause it is-
obviously, maybe they can, say, give an initial, let the permitting begin at least, because of what the county's paying for the permitting, correct? I guess,
That's what it sounds
yeah,
like.
the county's
We
paying
have-
for the permitting, so, I would say now, maybe, I guess I'll think about it some more as well, talk to some guys, but, letting them at least get through with the permitting, before you really have to make a really critical decision. But obviously, the permitting will have, the section of beach where that sand is going to go. Maybe they'll throw in a few different options for that, but
Yeah, I think the urgency is that the county board of commissioners wants to hear back from the municipalities by early January on whether they want to be considered for it or not.
well, you're right. So
can we
the Oak Island's
reinforce
gonna
that
say
with
yes.
with Fran's modeling report and that kind of information? And, the fact that it's lower cost to go to Holden, those kinds of
I think
pieces.
if we have it by then.
Well, see, and again, the report that we're tasked with doing now is really concentrating on this project back here, and that's the one. So we're not really getting into this one, but we have a lot of data and background information.
But
on this
you're
one.
taking that sand and putting it out on Oak Island. So,
This sand over here
so
versus this
just,
sand over here.
I'm thinking any negative
Yeah.
impacts that you uncover from that, it would only be multiplied by this bigger channel deepening, as well as your other
if
concerns
they
about
took
the
this material here and put it over there, we can kind of work with that. We'll kind of see, but.
Let me just say something. What I'm hearing Fran say is, if this project happens, we need that sand to come to Holden Beach. If we do a lot of research here, and we have a second meeting, and we discuss all this, and I realize I'm just off the top of my head because I don't have any data, but And let's say we were to decide that the risk was too high, Holden Beach doesn't want it, or that we can't come up with the additional $1 million plus of budget money for next year to do this. That doesn't mean Oak Island isn't going to grab it and come up with the ocean. And then it would be a worst case scenario where the project would get approved, Oak Island would get the sand, and we're in trouble. So I don't know what option, I don't know that leaves us very many options.
And if you guys choose that you don't want to hold a meeting to talk about it, but from the management perspective, we felt like we had to let you know about it because of your number 3.
Right.
And so if it does go to the commissioners and then they said, well, did the Inlet board have any?
Well, and I'm not saying not to have a meeting. I'm just saying I think we're kind of discussing it right now. We can have another meeting, no problem whatsoever, after we've had a chance to do. But as I listen to what we're talking about and what you've said, I think there's only one choice in my mind. But anyway, I've listened to what Fran says. I don't know how much more data Fran's going to come up with between now and next week when we have our special meeting.
Yeah.
So it's really a matter of just summarizing what he's already given us.
Right. And basically what I heard him tell us is if they do this project, we have to get the sand. There may be some additional risk to Holden Beach with deepening and widening, but
You won't know that till
there's a very high risk if Oak Island gets the sand.
What's your pleasure, Chair?
Yeah, so, does somebody want to make a motion to have a special meeting?
I recommend we have a special meeting to,
Christie?
yes.
When you guys discuss dates, can you give more than one and let us regroup with the board? Because I'm sure David will want to be here, and I don't know his schedule at the moment.
Okay. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to schedule a special meeting to discuss this. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carried unanimously. So if everybody could take out their calendars. And before this meeting, we were kind of knocking around some dates.
We talked about the 7th, maybe, if Dean was back
I
by
am
then?
back on Friday.
You're back on
I'm
Friday.
not back till Thursday night, 10 p.m., so I could meet on Friday, Monday or Friday.
Monday the 10th Monday the 3rd. Yeah, that I think Christie has a conflict with
Yeah.
that. So how does everybody's calendar look the 7th? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the same thing.
So given the urgency of it, I would say go ahead and meet without me, if that's an option.
Commissioners meet on the 18th.
So you technically have this. We have FEMA either come into town the 3rd or the 4th, and David and I have left our calendars open Monday and Tuesday. But other than that, you have the 7th or the 10th through the 14th, and I just need to deconflict dates with him and this room.
Okay, so then for one day, could we do Friday, December 7th? And for another one, do Monday, December 10th? Do those work for?
Excuse me.
Are you looking at the same time?
I'd like to request if we do it on the 10th that we do it in the afternoon. Is that a possibility?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'm fine.
I'm
Oh.
fine with that as well.
Okay, so that's 2 dates. Do you think that'll do it, or do you want a third?
Let's do 3 just in case.
Okay. What about Tuesday the 11th? Everybody good for Tuesday the 11th?
I am not good in the afternoon, but I am good in the morning.
So 7th anytime, 10th afternoon, and 11th morning.
All right. I'll deconflict dates, and we'll set a date.
And then you'll send us all the material, right?
That we have.
Will we have notes from this meeting? So
We
we have-
likely won't have the minutes from this meeting yet, but we can supply the figures and that were in the email and the things that
I'm thinking, again, the things that Fran is kind of bulleted.
Yeah, we can try to highlight that and just get that section.
Fran, do you have some information you could also send us?
Yeah, I can think about it. I mentioned a few things in the annual monitoring report, but just what we talked about today, and I talked about that before. Where Holden Beach is for this instance, Holden Beach is the downdrift beach for that sand. That sand would naturally make it to the Holden Beach shoreline, the east end, and so as the downdrift beach, this will have tremendous impacts on the Holden Beach shoreline, and they should have priority. The downdrift beach should have priority, just as the Ocean Isle has priority with Shallotte Inlet.
So this would also create what you refer to as a sediment trap.
It would. It's a little smaller, but it would.
So it's not only the sand that we'd be taking out; it's also the sand that is
yeah, we
migrating
have to
in
fill
and
in.
that.
Yeah, we fill in, and so that's why that's the big issue. Where if that sand went elsewhere,
right,
then
it's a double whammy.
Yeah, it could, and then there might be a minor benefit with additional dredging, where in terms of the shoreline becomes a little less erosional, but sooner or later that deficit of sand will hit the shoreline and
Okay, so we've set our 3 dates for a special meeting. We'll gather all the information and Christy will distribute it to us. And everybody will read up on it. We'll be ready to go on the 7th, the 10th, or the 11th. Does that sound good? Yep. Okay. Christy, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss?
I think that's all I had under that section.
We don't know anything about the merit yet, right?
No, I asked that question too, and I didn't get anything back yet.
Because last I heard it was in November.
Last you heard, I'm sorry, I missed
The
that.
last I heard it was scheduled for the end of November.
And that's the
It's not out
last
there
of
yet.
it, yeah. And then December is upon us.
Yes. Okay, moving on to number 7, community engagement newsletter. One of our charges is to be a link between the community and basically the town. That's in our ordinance. So one of the things that we discussed in our agenda meeting was creating like a little mini newsletter. Occasionally this would be created, possibly quarterly, emailed from the town. And also kind of driving that is that the land use plan is underway and our preliminary results show that the storm mitigation and protecting the beach strand is the top concern of the community. People are interested in our beach. So we were talking about maybe doing one for this fall where we would talk about the Florence and Michael summary. I know it changes every day, but also we would take this opportunity to explain that the beach held up well and that the berm in the Central Reach project performed as it was designed. And I think that a lot of people don't really understand that this is what it was supposed to do. You know, you hear a lot of people say, yep, we put that 15 million out there and it just washes away. But the point was, it was supposed to, and it was so effective. The waves broke out there, not on our dune. You know, we could talk about that kind of thing, just so people are better educated about what's going on. Because we're going to have Central Reach 2 coming, and I mean, I think none of us want to have to listen to, it just washes away. It's like, yeah, it does, but because that protected not only the dunes in the front row, but our infrastructure, second row, third row, fourth row. I know Dolly could probably, I remember from Floyd seeing washers, dryers, and water heaters from like the third row sitting in the fourth row's yards.
Should have been here with Hugo when the dunes washed under the houses, and As a result, you ended up with the second row houses from about the 600 block west because they pushed that sand that direction and built up those lots so they were buildable after that.
Well,
If we ever have one like that, you'll have a lot of sandboxes and swimming pools on the ocean front
yeah.
because they're going to fill up.
So anyway, that was kind of, like for the fall, maybe it'd focus on that. And in the spring, maybe something like how to care for your beach plants, fertilization. There is fertilization coming from Renourishment Association. More education about don't walk on the dunes, including the little starter dunes. Maybe include some pictures and some quotes from Steve and that kind of thing. But anyway, that's what we're thinking is that, one of the things in the ordinance is that we're supposed to act as a link between the BOC and the town manager and this board and the community, and that was one way to address it. I mean, if somebody has ideas on another way to fulfill that need, I'm totally open to that, but I wanted to throw that out.
And the staff will coordinate writing that. It can be listed under your section of the website and certainly in our blast. But that would be a staff coordinated effort as the rest of our information that comes out is directed by staff, and we'll maintain the one town voice, but we can compile that.
Okay, so if there is a motion to support doing that.
I'll make a motion to support doing that.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
So we would basically give to Chrissy or David what we think should go in that quarterly newsletter, and then they would craft it up, or we would give them kind of a final copy, and they would.
We'll be writing it.
Chrissy offered to write it, but I think that we could definitely help suggest the topics that need to be included. And I'm just thinking quarterly. I don't want to put a big burden on the staff, but I do want to fulfill our job.
Right, to communicate, okay.
Then I think that our citizens are really, really interested in this stuff. You look at the land use plan results, and it's really, man, everybody is into it.
Did a lot of people respond to that survey?
Yes.
HPPI? Good.
They did. No, that was from the town. It was for the land use plan survey.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, so
I
then,
like the idea of it, but one of the key things would be to keep it short,
Yes.
short and sweet, not too
Yeah,
too
because
long.
there's a lot of stuff to read and a lot of emails and announcements we get. Yeah,
right.
so keep
Well, the
it.
town uses Constant Contact, which has a great little newsletter feature that you can use.
Okay.
You know, a template
Yeah,
that would be very easy, very quick.
yeah.
It's really easy to work with.
Okay, good.
Um,
So can we, if we want to send, when are you thinking that the first one would come out?
I don't know. Christy?
Not in the next week.
No, but what I'm saying is, when we have our special meeting, can we maybe come to that with some ideas of what we think should be on the newsletter as well, as long as we're having a second meeting? Or should we do it at our regular meeting?
I think we should do it at our regular meeting, because usually special meetings should be focused on
On the one thing, okay.
But you never, I know you're having discussion, just make sure when you go back so that you all actually vote on. You got a first and a
Right.
second so far.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Well, we're doing discussion. Is there any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion carried unanimously. Okay, next is the Beach Protection Board announcements. Our next meeting is scheduled for December 20th, except for our now scheduled special meeting. Mike, Dean, Rhonda, and Vicki attended the NC Inlet and Waterways Conference, NCBIWA in Carolina Beach. Mike and Dean attended the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway Association meeting in Charleston. And the Coastal Resources Commission met November 27th through 29th, and staff attended that, right?
Tim and Rhonda and I think Dean went some as well.
To some of the pieces. Yep.
Okay, does anybody?
Mike as well was there.
Yeah, I
for
was there
some.
for some of it.
You guys want to give an update on Charleston, or?
Well, I can do the one from, from Wilmington. The one thing that I really took from that is there's a lot of smart people out there when it comes to the coast, and their passion for protecting our coast is just, it's unbelievable. And they had speakers there from the Corps. That's already been addressed here about their budget, their budget in the coming year. They had a lot of discussion about the Corps' decision that local sponsors cannot use Corps disposal areas. They have to use their own areas, such as we're doing down at the dog park. And a lot of these things make you start thinking and start looking into the future. They also talked about their easements. They want easements in perpetuity. But there's a couple of words that keeps coming up in all of the presentation. Sea level rise. Going back to the climate. Sea level rise and resilience. And building, there was one company that came up with a plan that they talked about, you've got to be proactive. If you see a problem, come up with a plan to not just to repair the problem, but try to fix the problem. Now, a lot of this stuff talked about flooding. The Charleston Harbor, they said that the sea level rise there has quadrupled in the last 10 years. They talked about going forward that there will be more tidal floodings. The change in the weather, because you have warmer waters, more moisture in the atmosphere, that rain events, will be more heavy and last longer, and which is going to produce these, these more flooding events. And so you sit there and you start thinking about, okay, how does that relate to Holden Beach? The event last Saturday, I saw a thing on Facebook with swordfish, and then in the canals during Matthew. And I think that this is probably an area that's going to have to be looked at. The marshlands, they're being squeezed because of the sea level rise. The vegetation, where it pushes back up against the edge of it, it's rising, and there's no place for it to go. And one of the big things that I got out of all the meetings is that if you see a problem, plan for it, go in to repair it, and then monitor it after if you have another event. There was also the discussion about finding new sand sources. It's in the beach monitoring report. If we're going to go to another Central Reach project, we're going to have to do that. There was also a speaker there from UNCW. He's a professor. He's a surfer dude. Okay, but he was fascinating, and what he had his students do after he gave the post Matthew presentation, and how he had his students to go out and look at the checking the buoys and on islands that are there was one island north of Figure 8 that's uninhabited, and his presentation was really good, and I think Dean and Peter talked with him after the meeting. And that's something else that I found in these meetings is the people you get to meet. Mm-hmm. The people you go over and introduce yourself to them. Brendan Dooley. He was there. He was down in Charleston. Had a discussion with him. He's the new shallow draft inlet manager for the Corps. But just they had a panel discussion, and they had the mayors. I think it was Riceville Beach, and maybe another town, and somebody from the Corps of their response after
Swansboro.
Swansboro, mm-hmm. Of their response after you know, and after the storms and how they communicated with the community. And they had some great, some great ideas. So you know, when you go to these things, you get to meet people, but then they really get your mind thinking, because you always take it and you bring it back home, and you start looking at, okay, what about, we're doing the canal dredging now. We're putting it down at the dog park. Okay, what's going to happen the next time? Where are we going to put it the next time? And there was a presentation about engineering with nature, and some of the things that they come up with, and some of the innovations of how to do some of this is just, it's the future. It's the future, and it was a very good meeting, very good, very informative, very informative. So, I thank the town for letting me go. I really enjoyed it.
Same here. I don't know that I can add much more to that. We did the Carolina Beach meeting, which is North Carolina coastline, but then we went down to Charleston, where it's the AIWA, the Atlantic coast from Virginia all the way down to Florida. Kind of the first day was a little higher level. The Corps of Engineers gave a bunch of presentations about all the stuff they're working on. And they took, they did it at the high level. Then each of the, Brennan got up and spoke for North Carolina, and each of the states talked. It's the same up and down the coast, basically. Everything that we're working on and worried about here, they're all working on and worried about there as well. The next day kind of got into lower level, specific projects. You talked about the dredging we're putting in the dog park. Mm-hmm. It's one of the islands. I want to say Sunset Beach.
Sunset Beach, yeah.
Who's doing a thin layer application, and Sunset Beach was worried about it, but another presenter talked about, I think down in Georgia, Jekyll Island.
Jekyll Island.
They're pumping their dredge material right on the marsh and keeping it thin, and they're monitoring it to make sure they don't, kill all the crabs and all that kind of thing. But maybe that's something we could bring here and do at Holden, or with our neighbors, kind of thing. Another one that I remember was very interesting was this technology. They were doing a dredging project, I think, off the coast of Florida, but they have this camera technology. They basically set up 3 cameras on somebody's front porch out on the ocean, and they take pictures of the waves breaking, and from the way the waves break, they can tell how deep the water is. And they did a time lapse, over the course of a year or something like that.
Yeah.
Before the project, during the project, and after. And, the guy got up and ran at high speed, and you could see how things changed as they were pumping material offshore, basically, and building a berm out in the ocean.
Now, this was a project where they weren't able to get all the easements. And so they decided, and since they couldn't get the easements to put it on the beach, they decided to put a big boom out there in the water
and let that get pulled into
put it near shore.
And that would wash it out.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that technology, it's open source software, so it's free software. If you had the cameras, and that's something we're going to talk with the UNC professor about. Is that something we could use here, and possibly for monitoring our inlets and working with ATM, of course, to. So there were a lot of interesting things like that at both conferences, basically. So again, Charleston was a bigger scale, but a lot of the same material was covered.
One thing that I knew but I didn't know was that how big of an onion the Corps of Engineers is.
No.
You just keep pulling back layers and layers and layers. And in this division, don't have a problem taking a shot at this division. But and you sit there and you wonder, how in the world do they ever get anything done, or approved with all of these layers? And it's just. In fact, I'd say probably over 50% of the people in the Charleston meeting was from the Corps of Engineers.
But definitely a good learning experience.
It was, most definitely.
Lots of good contacts.
Okay. Anybody have anything else to add? Okay, let's move to our.
I'm sorry, me.
Yeah.
yesterday. We got an email. I need to look at my phone so I don't tell you wrong. I think Fran briefly mentioned it, but a lot of you are on that listserv because you went before. But the long-term MOA meeting has been announced to be Wednesday, December 19th in New Bern, 10:30 to 12:30. Coleman Performance Hall, the North Carolina History Center. It's the same place it has been.
Can you send those details out?
Yes.
I wasn't quick enough to capture them.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, then let's move on to our status report to the BOC. I'll just read what I've got again, and you guys will edit this as we go. This is the November meeting update. Inlet and Beach Protection Board, IBPB, met November 29th, and the following issues and topics were addressed. Annual beach monitoring report. Fran White of ATM gave an in-depth presentation and answered questions about the report. Comprehensive long-term plan. A working framework for the long-term plan was discussed and agreed upon. Status of the beach and inlet. Staff provided an overview of conditions and issues relative to the beach strand and inlets in the aftermath of Hurricanes Florence and Michael. The board was updated on the Lockwood Folly situation and noted to schedule a special meeting to address this. This would be an object there. Community engagement newsletter. To meet the goal of serving as a link to the community as specified in the establishing ordinance, a regular, possibly quarterly, community newsletter will be created and distributed. Meetings. Members of the board attended the NC Beach Inlet and Waterway Association annual meeting and the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway Association meetings. Oops, let's take out that and the CRC meetings. What else do we got?
Maybe in the long-term planning, the second one there, we might want to add something to the effect that we've got some samples and some data, and we will all be bringing ideas to our next meeting and areas of our interest that we'd like to work on.
Okay.
However you want to word that.
Sample reports will be distributed.
Members will be thinking about which areas of the planning they'd like to get most involved in or something like that.
On the special meeting, should you give some flavor for why that is necessary? What came up to require that?
The timing.
That a grant became available or something to that effect?
Approval.
For the Lockwood Folly
Okay.
Inlet
Widening and deepening.
widening and deepening.
I would say,
Just
I hear what you're saying.
there's
I'm
all the
trying to
commissioners
tie
are here but
yeah.
one, but that commissioner is going to wonder, why do we need a special meeting?
Right. So the grant's been available for a while, and we had already reported that they applied on it. But I think what you can tie that to and say is that the county wants feedback from the municipalities on the grant
Perfect.
County's looking for feedback.
in an expedited manner.
So the county is looking for feedback in an expedited manner. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Need a motion?
Mm-hmm.
Make a motion. Oh, sorry.
Public comment. Public comment.
No, motion to approve the report.
Oh,
right?
Okay. Sorry, my fault.
So you made a motion?
And make a
Is there
motion
a
to
second?
approve the report.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. That was unanimous. Okay, now the public comment.
When you guys go to meetings, if there are particular presentations that you see that, again, could be really informative or just valuable for the citizens to see, and you can, like do a link or whatever, I would really encourage that because if something comes and it gets put on our website from a meeting, people can go in and look at it and could get, again, as interested as you are by it. And also just if there are people there that you think would be particularly interesting to have them come and give a presentation at a BOCM maybe, where we do get more of the public coming, just always keep it in mind if there would be somebody who would be willing and you think it's somebody who brings a message that is particularly pertinent, it could be beneficial. You might find one a year that gives us a new insight.
Those presentations, I remember I went up to Pam Castens and asked her for her presentation slides. Somebody told me that they were going to.
They're on the website.
They're
on the website.
They're all on the website.
They're all on their
Not
website.
the town website, on the
on their website.
on their website. Okay. So if there's one that we think is particularly appropriate, we could maybe send a link on our website to it.
So if the board was particularly interested in something, you could send it to me and then we can look at linking it maybe to your page.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do that for AIWA. I'm still waiting. Brad Pickle is working on getting those up on the on the internet.
Okay.
But as soon as I have those, I can pick out the ones I think are valuable.
Yeah.
Well, would one of you guys like to send that then to Christy for the
Yeah.
each one?
I'll look at that one.
Okay.
Fans.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. If there are any more public comment?
The only thing I haven't heard mentioned is trash. And I think if you're dealing with the beach, at some point you've got to deal with trash on the beach. You know.
I'm sorry, Dolly. I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing.
But you do. You need to. I mean, it's an aspect that's out there. There are a lot of places that are going, strawless, and they're doing things community-wise. Even when we went into the Galapagos 2 weeks ago, we could carry no plastic bottles.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things, and I know it comes to us from the ocean, but we can do things to better educate, and if we want to keep the beach pristine, that's got to be an element of it. You may not want to hear it, but
No, I hear you. Okay, are there any more comments? Okay, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.